The Aspiring Artist. Introduction to Elijah Harper. Elijah Harper was born into the heartbeat of Baltimore, a city alive with resilience and creativity yet weighed down by systemic challenges. In the working-class neighborhood of Cherry Hill, Elijah's childhood was shaped by both the struggles and triumphs of his community. His home was filled with the comforting chaos of family and neighbors, people who had little but gave everything to support each other. Elijah's gift for art emerged early. He would spend hours sketching the vibrant scenes of his neighborhood, kids playing basketball in the alley, mothers juggling groceries and children, street vendors shouting their wares. His mother, Gloria, a nurse who worked tirelessly to provide for him and his younger sister, always encouraged his creativity. "Elijah," she would say, "your art tells stories. Stories that matter. Don't let anyone take that away from you." Her words became the foundation of Elijah's identity as an artist. His work captured the beauty and humanity of those around him, elevating moments of everyday life into vivid, emotional narratives. But as Elijah grew older, he realized that talent and passion weren't enough to break into the art world. Early challenges. Baltimore's art scene, like many others, was dominated by elitism. Success often hinged on connections, formal education, and access to influential galleries, resources Elijah didn't have. Without the financial means to attend art school, he taught himself by studying library books on technique and art history. He found inspiration in the works of Jacob Lawrence, Basquiat, and Kara Walker, artists who had turned personal and cultural narratives into powerful visual statements. Despite his talent, Elijah struggled to gain recognition. Local galleries turned him away, their rejection letters polite but dismissive. "Your work is promising," one note read, "but it lacks the refinement our clients expect." Others were more blunt, questioning the commercial viability of his art. "Collectors prefer universal themes," one gallery owner explained, "not overly personal or political works." Each rejection stung, but Elijah refused to give up. He believed in the power of his stories and was determined to share them. He showcased his paintings at community events, sold prints at local markets, and even displayed his work on the walls of his neighborhood library. Though his audience was small, their reactions fueled his determination. "I see my grandmother in this," one woman said, gazing at Elijah's painting Strength in Shadows, which depicted an elderly woman sitting proudly on her stoop. "You've captured her spirit." For Elijah, these moments reinforced his purpose. His art wasn't just about aesthetics, it was about connection, rejection and persistence. Elijah decided to aim higher, submitting his portfolio to some of Baltimore's most prestigious galleries. His collection included Sunrise on Cherry Hill, a vibrant piece symbolizing hope and resilience, and Concrete Dreams, which depicted children playing amid the stark gray of an urban landscape. He believed these works spoke not just to his community, but to universal themes of struggle and perseverance. But the responses were dishearteningly familiar. Gallery after gallery turned him away, citing his lack of formal training or connections. Some didn't bother to respond at all. "You've got the talent," one gallery director told him during a rare face-to-face meeting, "but collectors want names they recognize. You're a risk." Though the constant rejection weighed on him, Elijah's resolve only grew stronger. He knew that his work mattered, even if the established art world didn't see it yet. It was this unshakable belief that led him to Lenox Gallery. The encounter with Victor Lenox. Lenox Gallery was the pinnacle of Baltimore's art scene, known for showcasing internationally renowned artists and catering to elite collectors. For Elijah, it represented both an opportunity and a challenge. If he could get his work into Lenox Gallery, it could change everything. Dressed in his best, an old but neatly pressed suit, Elijah arrived at the gallery with his portfolio in hand. The receptionist greeted him with a polite but indifferent smile, taking his name and asking him to wait. After what felt like hours, he was ushered into the office of Victor Lenox himself. Victor was every bit the image of power and authority, impeccably dressed, exuding confidence, and surrounded by expensive art and furnishings. He flipped through Elijah's portfolio with a practiced air of disinterest, barely pausing to examine the pieces. When he finally looked up, his words were measured but cutting. "You have passion, Mr. Harper. That's clear. But passion isn't enough. This," he gestured at the portfolio, "lacks refinement." Elijah tried to explain the stories behind his work, the inspiration drawn from his community and personal experiences. "My art tells the stories of people who aren't often seen," he said. "It's about resilience, about finding beauty in struggle." Victor smirked. "Stories are fine for street art," he said, "but galleries like mine deal in sophistication. This? It's amateurish." Elijah's heart sank, but he remained composed. "Art isn't just about refinement," he replied. "It's about connection." Victor dismissed him with a wave. "Collectors don't pay for connection. They pay for mastery." "I'm sorry, but your work doesn't belong here." As Elijah left the gallery, his humiliation deepened when he overheard Victor mocking his work during a conversation with a group of patrons. "Raw doesn't mean good," Victor said with a chuckle. "Sometimes raw just means unfinished." Turning point. That night, Elijah sat in his tiny apartment, his portfolio lying on the table like a reminder of his failure. Victor's words echoed in his mind: amateurish. Doesn't belong. Unfinished. For hours, he wrestled with self-doubt, wondering if he should give up on his dream. But as the night wore on, despair gave way to determination. Elijah thought of his mother's words, the pride in his neighbors' faces, and the stories his art had already touched. He realized that Victor's opinion didn't define him. His work mattered, and he would find a way to share it, on his own terms. "If they won't let me in," Elijah muttered, picking up his brush, "I'll build my own way in." Elijah began painting with renewed vigor, creating works that were unapologetically bold and deeply personal. At the same time, he started researching alternative ways to share his art, determined to bypass the gatekeepers who had tried to silence him. Elijah Harper's journey was far from over. In fact, it was just beginning. And this time, he wasn't asking for permission. Discovering a platform. After his humiliating encounter with Victor Lennox, Elijah Harper knew he needed to rethink his approach. Traditional galleries had proven inaccessible, and the gatekeepers of the art world showed no interest in his work. Feeling disheartened but not defeated, Elijah confided in his friend Marcus, a tech-savvy marketer who had been following his journey. "Elijah," Marcus said, "you don't need their approval. The internet's your gallery. Social media is where people connect directly with art and stories. You've got both. Use it." Skeptical, but willing to try, Elijah set up an Instagram account at Harper Stories. His first post featured a photo of concrete dreams, accompanied by a heartfelt caption. "Art tells the stories we can't put into words. This is Cherry Hill, my home, its beauty, its struggles, its people. This is where my heart lives." The response was modest, likes from friends and a few encouraging comments, but Elijah was undeterred. He began posting daily, sharing new pieces along with captions that revealed the stories behind them. Slowly, his account grew. People from all walks of life started following him, connecting with the authenticity of his work. Going viral. One evening, Elijah decided to post one of his most personal pieces. Titled "The Boy Who Waited," it depicted a young boy sitting alone on a stoop, his expression a mixture of hope and sorrow. It was a reflection of Elijah's childhood, a tribute to the years he spent dreaming of opportunities that seemed out of reach. The caption was raw and heartfelt. "This is me as a kid. Waiting for a chance, waiting for someone to see me. I've been told my work doesn't belong in galleries, that it's too raw, too unrefined. But art isn't about perfection, it's about truth. This is my truth." Hitting post, Elijah wasn't sure what to expect. When he checked his phone the next morning, he was stunned. The post had gone viral, garnering thousands of likes and hundreds of comments overnight. Messages flooded in from people who resonated with the painting and its story. "This is my childhood too," one comment read. "Thank you for putting this feeling into art." Another follower wrote, "Your work speaks directly to my soul." Don't stop creating. Art bloggers and influencers shared the post widely, tagging Elijah and praising his unique voice. Within days, his follower count skyrocketed, and his inbox was filled with messages of admiration and inquiries about his work. For the first time, Elijah felt seen, not by gatekeepers, but by people who understood the stories he was telling. Critical acclaim. Among those captivated by Elijah's viral post was Lydia Kessler, a renowned art critic known for her sharp eye and passion for uncovering new talent. Scrolling through Instagram one evening, Lydia stumbled upon The Boy Who Waited and was immediately drawn to its raw emotion and poignant narrative. Intrigued, Lydia explored Elijah's account, marveling at his ability to blend vibrant imagery with deeply personal storytelling. She sent him a direct message. "Your work is extraordinary. I'd love to feature you in my column. Let's connect." Elijah was stunned. During their conversation, he shared his journey, the systemic barriers he faced, the rejection from galleries, and his decision to bypass traditional avenues to share his art. Lydia was moved by his resilience and vision. A week later, Lydia's feature on Elijah was published in The Vanguard, a leading art magazine. Titled "The Artist Who Paints Truth: Elijah Harper's Journey from Rejection to Recognition," the article praised his ability to turn personal struggles into universal narratives. "Elijah Harper reminds us that art doesn't need to be polished to be profound," Lydia wrote. "It needs honesty." The feature catapulted Elijah into the international art scene. Collectors and galleries that had once ignored him now clamored for his attention, but Elijah remained focused on staying true to his roots. For him, the recognition wasn't just personal, it was a victory for his community. Victor's dismissal. As Elijah's name gained prominence, the shift in the art world toward emotional, story-driven works began to make waves. Collectors who had once prized polished, abstract pieces started seeking out works with heart and narrative depth. But Victor Lennox dismissed the trend entirely. "This so-called movement of raw and emotional art will fade," Victor declared during a staff meeting at Lennox Gallery. "Serious collectors know better than to invest in sentimentality. Art is about refinement, not fleeting emotions." Victor's arrogance blinded him to the changing tides. Attendance at his gallery events was dwindling, and several prominent collectors had shifted their focus to newer, more diverse artists. Yet, Victor clung to his belief that the art world would eventually return to his vision of sophistication. A fateful transaction. One day, Elijah received an email from a prominent art broker representing an anonymous collector. The collector had discovered Elijah's work online and was particularly drawn to Eclipse Dreams, a painting that depicted a lone figure standing amidst a storm, gazing at a faint ray of sunlight breaking through the clouds. The offer was staggering, more than Elijah had ever imagined. After confirming the details, he agreed to the sale. What Elijah didn't know was that the broker had chosen Lennox Gallery to facilitate the transaction, believing it would add prestige to the deal. Victor, unaware of the artist's identity, eagerly accepted the arrangement. To him, it was an opportunity to restore some of the gallery's fading relevance. Meanwhile, the anonymous buyer, impressed by Elijah's story, invited him to witness the sale in person. "Your work deserves to be celebrated," they wrote. "It's only fitting for you to be there." Elijah agreed, unaware that this fateful transaction would bring him face to face with the man who had once dismissed him. The stage was set for a dramatic collision of past and present, one that would change both of their lives forever. The confrontation. Victor's disdain. The private viewing room at Lennox Gallery exuded the aura of exclusivity Victor Lennox had built his reputation on. Soft lighting cast a warm glow on Eclipse Dreams, Elijah Harper's evocative painting. The anonymous buyer, a respected figure in the art world, stood admiring the piece, their appreciation clear. "This is remarkable," the buyer said, their voice filled with admiration. "The depth, the emotion, it's extraordinary." Victor entered the room, wine glass in hand, his polished demeanor as confident as ever. He glanced briefly at the painting, then turned to the buyer with a practiced smile. "Ah, yes," he began, "an intriguing work. But let's be honest, this is the kind of piece that appeals to sentiment, not sophistication." The buyer raised an eyebrow. How so? Victor swirled his wine, his tone dripping with condescension. It's unrefined. Emotional, certainly, but emotion is easy. True art requires discipline, technique, and mastery. This? It's mediocre at best. The kind of work that stirs brief interest, but fails to endure. The buyer frowned. I see it differently. This piece tells a powerful story. Victor shrugged. Sentimentality often does. But serious collectors value refinement over raw expression. Victor's words hung in the air, and the buyer's expression hardened. What Victor didn't realize was that the artist he had so casually disparaged was about to step into the room. Elijah's revelation. Elijah Harper arrived at the gallery as invited by the buyer, unaware that the transaction was taking place at Lenox Gallery. As he entered the familiar space, memories of his previous encounter with Victor flooded back. The humiliation of being dismissed, mocked, and underestimated replayed in his mind. When Elijah stepped into the viewing room, the atmosphere shifted. The buyer turned to greet him warmly, while Victor's confident facade faltered. Mr. Harper, Victor said cautiously. What brings you here? Elijah met Victor's gaze with calm determination. I was invited, he said. The buyer wanted me to witness the sale of my work. Victor blinked, his confusion giving way to shock. Your work? Elijah gestured toward Eclipsed Dreams. Yes. That's my painting. The buyer's expression changed to one of quiet fury as they turned to Victor. You didn't know the artist? They demanded. You've been selling this piece without realizing who created it? Victor stammered, his composure unraveling. I wasn't informed. You didn't ask, Elijah interrupted, his voice steady but firm. You didn't care. The tension in the room was palpable. The buyer's disappointment was evident as they addressed Victor. You mocked this painting, called it mediocre, and dismissed its artist, all while profiting from their talent. This behavior is appalling. Victor tried to recover, his tone defensive. I didn't mean. You meant exactly what you said, Elijah interjected. You dismissed me when I brought you my portfolio, called my work amateurish, and told me it didn't belong. And now here you are, profiting from the same work you once ridiculed. The buyer's voice was cold. This transaction is off. I refuse to support someone who disrespects the very artists they claim to represent. Public fallout. The confrontation didn't stay confined to the gallery walls. The buyer, a prominent figure with a substantial social media following, shared the story online, recounting the arrogance and hypocrisy they had witnessed. Today, I saw everything wrong with the art world, their post began. Victor Lenox, the so-called gatekeeper of fine art, mocked a painting and its artist, only to discover that the artist was present. That artist is Elijah Harper, whose work is extraordinary. Lenox's behavior was disgraceful. The post went viral within hours, sparking widespread outrage. Artists shared their own stories of rejection and mistreatment by elitist galleries, while collectors criticized Victor's condescension and lack of respect. Media outlets picked up the story, running headlines like Gatekeeper Exposed, Elijah Harper confronts Victor Lenox and the artist who redefined success. For Elijah, the incident became a turning point. His name was suddenly everywhere, and his story resonated with people far beyond the art world. Collectors clamored to acquire his work, and institutions that had previously ignored him reached out with offers to feature his paintings. Elijah's profile soared, and his voice became a rallying cry for change. Victor's decline. For Victor Lenox, the fallout was swift and brutal. Prominent collectors severed ties with Lenox Gallery, unwilling to associate themselves with its tarnished reputation. Artists who had once sought representation at the gallery withdrew their works, leaving its walls increasingly empty. Victor's attempts to salvage his reputation only deepened his woes. Public apologies were dismissed as insincere, and efforts to rebrand Lenox Gallery as a champion of emerging talent were met with widespread skepticism. Attendance at the gallery's events dwindled to nothing, and its once prestigious openings became eerily quiet. Within months, Victor faced financial ruin. Forced to sell off parts of his personal art collection to cover mounting debts, he watched as his empire crumbled. Lenox Gallery, once a cornerstone of the art world, became a cautionary tale of hubris and irrelevance. Meanwhile, Elijah Harper continued to rise, his success inspiring a new generation of artists to challenge the status quo. For Victor, the loss was complete. But for Elijah, the confrontation marked the beginning of a new era, one where authenticity triumphed over arrogance, and the voices once silenced were finally being heard. Redemption and transformation. Victor's plea for redemption. Victor Lenox sat alone in his now deserted gallery. The once bustling space, filled with the hum of collectors and the glow of high-profile events, had become a hollow shell. His empire, built on prestige and exclusivity, had crumbled under the weight of his arrogance. Facing mounting debts and an irreparably tarnished reputation, Victor was forced to confront the choices that had led him here. For weeks, he avoided the thought of Elijah Harper. The memory of their confrontation at his gallery still burned, a sharp reminder of his hypocrisy. But as the financial pressures mounted, Victor realized he had only one path forward. Swallowing his pride, he reached out to Elijah. The email was uncharacteristically vulnerable. "Elijah, I write this knowing I have no right to ask for anything. My arrogance and short-sightedness cost me everything, and I know I was wrong. I want to change. I want to contribute to something meaningful. If there's any way I can support what you're building, I humbly ask for the opportunity." To Victor's surprise, Elijah responded. The meeting was set at the Phoenix, Elijah's newly established gallery. When Victor arrived, he was struck by the energy of the space. Unlike his own gallery, which had thrived on exclusivity, the Phoenix radiated warmth and inclusivity. Artists of all backgrounds collaborated openly, visitors engaged with the exhibits, and the walls were alive with vibrant, diverse works. Victor found Elijah in a small office at the back of the gallery. Standing tall, Elijah greeted him with a mix of curiosity and guarded openness. "Victor," Elijah began, "why are you here?" Victor's voice was heavy with sincerity. "I've lost everything," he admitted. "But I see now that my loss is nothing compared to the harm I caused others. I want to rebuild, not for myself, but to help the artists I once ignored. I'm asking for a chance to prove I can change." Elijah's offer. Elijah studied Victor carefully. The man before him was a shadow of the confident gatekeeper who had dismissed him years ago. There was no arrogance in his demeanor, only humility and desperation. Elijah thought of his mother's words about forgiveness and growth. "Victor," Elijah began, "this gallery isn't just about showcasing art. It's about creating a space for stories, for connection, and for lifting others up. If you're serious about change, I'll give you a probationary role here. But understand, this isn't about regaining prestige. This is about doing the work." Victor's eyes filled with gratitude. "Thank you, Elijah. I won't waste this opportunity." Elijah assigned Victor to a role far removed from the leadership position he once held. Victor's responsibilities included assisting artists with installations, coordinating workshops, and working directly with visitors. It was humbling, but Victor embraced it with determination, eager to rebuild his reputation from the ground up. Victor's growth. As Victor immersed himself in the day-to-day operations of the Phoenix, he began to see the art world through a new lens. Working alongside underrepresented artists, he heard their stories of rejection, resilience, and triumph. A young painter shared their struggles with racial bias in the industry. A sculptor recounted being dismissed as too political. Each story deepened Victor's understanding of the systemic barriers he had once perpetuated. Gradually, Victor transformed. His critiques, once sharp and dismissive, became thoughtful and constructive. He offered guidance to artists navigating contracts and pricing, drawing on his years of experience to help them succeed. Artists who had initially been wary of his presence came to respect him as a mentor and ally. Victor also became a public advocate for inclusion and equity in the art world. Speaking at conferences and art forums, he shared his story as a cautionary tale. "I thought I was preserving the art world's integrity," he admitted during one keynote address. "But I was only stifling its growth. I've learned that art isn't about gatekeeping, it's about opening doors." Victor's authenticity resonated with audiences, earning him a new kind of respect. He became a symbol of redemption, proof that even the most entrenched figures could change. Elijah's expanding vision. While Victor rebuilt himself, Elijah continued to expand the reach and impact of the Phoenix. His vision wasn't limited to a single gallery, it was a movement. Elijah opened satellite locations in underserved communities, ensuring that art was accessible to everyone. These spaces became hubs for local talent, offering workshops, mentorship programs, and opportunities to showcase work. Elijah also launched the Harper Foundation for Emerging Artists, a global initiative dedicated to supporting marginalized voices. The foundation provided grants, residencies, and professional development programs, empowering artists to pursue their craft without fear of rejection or financial constraints. Beyond the foundation, Elijah became a leading voice for systemic change. He partnered with major museums and galleries to develop policies promoting diversity, equity, and accessibility. His speeches at international symposiums challenged the art world to redefine its standards of excellence. Elijah Harper didn't just find a seat at the table, one critic wrote. He built a new table, where everyone is welcome. Through his efforts, Elijah reshaped the industry, inspiring collectors, curators, and artists alike to embrace authenticity and diversity. For young creators around the world, his journey became a beacon of hope, proving that success could be achieved without compromise. A shared journey. By the end of Victor's probationary period, he had become an integral part of the Phoenix. Offered him a permanent role as an advisor, a position Victor accepted with gratitude. Though he no longer sought the spotlight, Victor found fulfillment in supporting others and contributing to a larger purpose. One evening, after a particularly successful exhibition, Victor approached Elijah. "You built something extraordinary here," he said quietly. Elijah smiled. "We've built it, Victor. Together." Their partnership, once defined by conflict, had evolved into a story of collaboration, growth, and redemption. For Elijah, the journey wasn't just about creating art, it was about creating a world where every artist, regardless of their background, could find their voice. A legacy rewritten. Reviving a gallery. Victor Lennox's former gallery, once a bastion of elitism and exclusivity, now pulsed with new life under Elijah Harper's vision. Renamed the Phoenix Central, the space was unrecognizable. The cold, pristine walls that once exuded superiority now burst with vibrant murals and dynamic installations. Artists from diverse backgrounds showcased their work, creating an atmosphere of inclusivity and celebration. Elijah saw the transformation of the gallery as symbolic, a rebirth, just like its name. The Phoenix was no longer a gatekeeping institution, it was a thriving community hub where art became a bridge to understanding, empathy, and change. Events at the Phoenix Central became known for their energy and accessibility. Free workshops, live demonstrations, and open mic nights encouraged visitors to engage with art in meaningful ways. A children's corner featured art created by young talents, reminding attendees that creativity belonged to everyone. The grand reopening was a resounding success. Artists, collectors, and community members filled the gallery, their excitement palpable. Elijah's speech that evening was simple yet profound. This gallery isn't just a place for art. It's a place for stories. Stories of resilience, connection, and transformation. Welcome to the Phoenix, a home for everyone. Victor's redemption. Victor Lennox had come a long way from his days as an art world gatekeeper. Once known for his arrogance, he had become a symbol of redemption and growth. As a mentor at the Phoenix, Victor used his years of expertise to guide emerging artists, offering constructive critiques and practical advice. Victor's transformation didn't go unnoticed. Artists who had once avoided him now sought his guidance, valuing his thoughtful insights and genuine desire to help them succeed. His humility and dedication made him a respected figure in the community. Victor also took on a public role as an advocate for diversity and equity in the art industry. At conferences and art forums, he spoke openly about his mistakes and the lessons he had learned. "I spent years building walls," Victor admitted during a keynote address. "Now, I'm committed to tearing them down." The art world thrives when we include all voices, not just the privileged few. Victor's authenticity resonated with audiences. His redemption story inspired others in the industry to reflect on their own practices, leading to meaningful discussions about inclusivity and change. Elijah's global impact. While the Phoenix Central flourished as a local hub, Elijah's influence extended far beyond Baltimore. Through the Harper Foundation for Emerging Artists, he created opportunities for underrepresented voices worldwide. The foundation funded residencies, provided grants, and hosted exhibitions that highlighted diverse perspectives. Elijah also worked tirelessly to challenge systemic barriers in the art world. Partnering with major museums and galleries, he pushed for policies that prioritized diversity and accessibility. His efforts led to groundbreaking initiatives, including mentorship programs for young artists of color and mandatory diversity training for curators and collectors. Elijah Harper isn't just an artist, one critic wrote. He's an architect of change. Elijah's work redefined how talent was discovered and celebrated. By championing authenticity over conformity, he inspired a new generation of artists to embrace their unique voices. His advocacy reshaped the art industry, making it more inclusive and reflective of the world's rich tapestry of stories. Final reflection. 10 years after the opening of the Phoenix, Elijah stood in the gallery's main hall, surrounded by the vibrant energy of the community he had built. Children laughed as they painted in a workshop, artists shared their stories with visitors, and live music filled the air. Elijah's eyes fell on Eclipsed Dreams, the painting that had once been the catalyst for his confrontation with Victor. Now displayed prominently in the gallery, it symbolized the journey he had taken, from rejection and humiliation to triumphant transformation. Victor approached Elijah, holding 2 glasses of champagne. "We've come a long way," Victor said, handing him a glass. Elijah smiled. "We have. And there's still so much more to do." As the evening continued, Elijah found a quiet moment to reflect. He thought of his mother's unwavering support, the challenges he had faced, and the countless stories that had inspired his work. He thought of the artists who had found their voices at the Phoenix, and the changes his efforts had sparked across the art world. Raising his glass, Elijah whispered to himself, to resilience, to stories, to the power of art. Surrounded by the community he had nurtured, Elijah Harper knew his legacy was far more than his art. It was in the lives he had touched, the barriers he had broken, and the world he had reimagined, a world where every voice could be heard, and every story could shine.